Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I'm here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Our panel returns today to discuss the latest economic and political issues. The Honorable Joe Oliver is a former federal Minister of Finance and Minister of Natural Resources. The Honorable Gary Marr is a former Alberta Cabinet Minister and Alberta agent in Washington, D.C. He now heads the Canada West Foundation. And Sandra Pupatello is a former Ontario Economic Development and Trade Minister. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
I thought I'd start with the budget announcement that the federal budget will be on April the 16th, and maybe start with a former finance minister. What do you expect in that budget, Joe?
Well, the Minister of Finance has some real problems to contend with. Growth is very poor. GDP growth per capita has been flat or declining for the last 5 or 6 years. And this is a serious economic issue, but it's also a big political issue. Inflation is down somewhat, but of course prices haven't declined. And so people are still wrestling with the fact that prices are elevated, not going to decline, and the fact that their salaries in real terms have not increased. So that's a serious issue. In the meantime, interest rates are higher than they were. There's some talk about interest rate reductions by the Fed, but it looks like the U.S. will be reducing rates as well, probably less frequently and less robustly than in Canada. Their rate declines may start, people are speculating, in June, and maybe another one in December or so. But if the governor of the Bank of Canada decides that it's time to reduce rates here, that of course is going to weaken the dollar further and push up inflation. So there's some dilemmas that the bank has to confront. And in the meantime, there's a housing crisis, and and Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister, has said that it's all about housing. Well, I'm not sure what they think they can do about that. They had a first-time housing credit, which just wasn't used at all, and so they've abandoned that. So I don't know what else they have up their sleeve, but it's going to be a very challenging time because there are demands from everywhere, including the military, which is in a pitiable state. It can't even go to exercises in some cases, international exercises, and every country in NATO is putting pressure on Canada to move its very low military contribution of about 1.3% of GDP to 2%. The Prime Minister said he's not going to do that, but he's got to move a bit. And where's the money going to come from?
Lots of challenges. You're absolutely right. Sandra, what are you looking for?
Well, we do all still talk about housing, and I think many of the initiatives that have been brought about are going to just take such a long time before we see it or feel it making a difference at the local level, that I suspect that we'll see some kind of benefit in the budget that's going to be immediate. There were numbers out this week about how many mortgage defaults there have been, how many credit card payments are being missed, and those figures are going through the roof, which means these interest rates, in my view, are having this impact, and we're still only maybe 20% through those who are being affected by these increases in the interest rates. So I was disappointed that the rate got held at the same level today and not decreased, and now they're suspecting by June it might start going down. We just can't afford the increases that have already happened. And the same is true, as Joe mentioned, with prices. It's nice to hear inflation might be lowering, but that doesn't mean it's lower than what it used to be. And it doesn't mean that the prices are coming down from the massive increases we had over the last couple of years. So from a budget perspective, I think it's going to be about affordability and how do we make these daily items more affordable in the short term until we can start seeing some longer term impacts of those investments in the infrastructure like housing.
We're going to hear from Gary Marr next. We are going to take a break, though, so stay tuned. We'll be back with all three of our guests after these messages.